All right, so picture this. Swapping the Bavarian Alps for, well, let's just say, a whole lot of sheep. That's the journey our subject, Rudi Bublitz, took.
Yeah, talk about a change of scenery.
Right. From Germany to becoming a major player in the New Zealand startup world.
A major player, you say. He was named New Zealand's Archangel in 2021.
Archangel. Okay, now that's going to make you wonder what makes this guy so special, right?
It's not just about the money, that's for sure.
Exactly. This is someone who's really shaping the whole startup scene over there.
Absolutely. His philosophy, the way he mentors startups, it's all pretty unique.
So today, we're diving deep into Rudi Bublitz, figuring out what makes him tick. Like, how does someone go from Germany to chief cat herder?
Chief cat herder. You're really hitting those quirky details today.
Gotta keep things interesting, right?
Fair enough.
But seriously, to understand a guy like Rudi, we gotta rewind a bit, go back to his roots. Born in Germany, studied European Business Administration.
At ESB Business School, no less.
Exactly. You'd think he'd be, I don't know, running a big company in Frankfurt or something.
Especially back then, in the mid-'80s, studying abroad wasn't as common as it is now.
Right. And he managed to snag a Fulbright scholarship along the way.
Speaks volumes about his drive, wouldn't you say?
Totally. Even back then, he had that global outlook, that desire to, like, bridge different worlds.
And you can definitely see how that plays out in his career later on.
Yeah.
Connecting people, ideas across borders.
It's like foreshadowing, almost. But, okay, before we get ahead of ourselves, he did spend some time in the corporate world, right?
Oh, yeah. He wasn't just some, like, instant startup guru.
So fill us in. What was his corporate life like?
Well, how about this? He won top consultant at SAP in '89.
SAP, as in the software giant SAP.
The one and only.
Okay, that's a pretty big deal. That's a super competitive environment.
Tells you something about his ability to perform under pressure.
Which, let's be honest, is a pretty useful skill to have in the startup world too, right?
You got that right. Startups are all about adapting, making quick decisions.
So we've got this high achiever killing it in the corporate world. When does angel investing even enter the picture?
Well, it looks like his first experience was with Ice Angels.
They're a well-known angel investor group, right?
Yep, and he even won their Active Investor Award in 2011.
So not just dipping his toes in, he was already making waves.
He doesn't do anything halfway, this guy.
And yet he doesn't stop there. A year later, he co-founds Flying Kiwi Angels, or FKA as it's better known.
And here's where things get really interesting.
Because FKA isn't your typical angel investor group.
Not even close. They basically took the traditional model and flipped it on its head.
How so?
Well, for starters, no membership fees for investors.
Really? That's almost unheard of, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And get this, no commission on investments for the founders either.
Whoa. Okay, that's a game changer.
Right. It really shifts the dynamic, makes it so much more founder-friendly.
Like they're saying, we're all in this together. I like it.
And it seems to be working.
It really does. It's like, instead of focusing on taking their cut, they're all about boosting those New Zealand startups.
Yeah, and the results speak for themselves. We're talking 72 members, a portfolio of 32 ventures.
Those are some impressive numbers.
Hold on, it gets better. Over $4 million invested. And get this, an $11 million return for those investors.
Okay, so they're not just warm and fuzzy feelings, they're actually making it rain.
Exactly. And we're talking some notable exits, too, like ℂ𝕠𝕝. They were acquired by Autodesk.
ℂ𝕠𝕝. That name rings a bell.
There's Streamlined Dailies Review for filmmakers. You know, when directors and editors review footage during production.
Ah, right, right.
Rudi was involved with them from the early stages.
Wow, so they're putting their money where their mouth is, and it's paying off big time. But it's not just about the money, right? I mean, we keep coming back to this idea of mentorship, this really hands-on approach.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't your typical, here's a check, go make us millions kind of deal.
Yeah.
They're really invested in guiding those founders.
Yeah, it's more like having a team of experienced entrepreneurs in your corner, which would be, let's face it, incredibly valuable for any startup, especially in those early days.
Totally. It's those early days when you need all the help you can get.
Speaking of help, we got to talk about Rudi's passion project, those 80 eye clinics he set up.
The angel drop-in clinics, yeah. So classic Rudi.
It's like he's saying, look, I want to help as many founders as possible, even if they're not pitching to FKA.
Right. It's about lifting up the entire ecosystem, not just picking winners for his portfolio.
And these clinics, they're completely free, right?
They're totally free. Any founder, doesn't matter what stage they're at, can get advice and support from seasoned entrepreneurs.
That's huge.
It really is. Think about it. You're a new founder, you're full ideas, but maybe a little unsure about how to actually make them happen.
And bam, you've got access to someone like Rudi who's been there, done that.
It's like finding a cheat code for starting your business.
And this isn't some big secret either. He's really out there promoting the New Zealand startup scene.
Oh yeah, his weekly newsletter, he's super active on LinkedIn.
Always championing different companies, sharing what he knows.
He's like a one-man marketing machine for New Zealand startups.
You know what else I've noticed? He talks a lot about storytelling. And not just in the sense of like how to craft your pitch.
It's deeper than that.
Way deeper. He talks about it like you need to weave this whole narrative that really captures people's imagination.
It's about connecting with investors on an emotional level, not just hitting them with facts and figures.
Exactly. And I think that comes from his diverse background, you know, the whole international experience working in both corporate and startup worlds gives him this unique understanding of what makes people tick.
He's got that insider-outsider perspective.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it all circles back to his investment philosophy.
Absolutely. He's not just looking for the next big payday. He wants to support founders who are truly passionate.
Founders who share his vision of a thriving startup scene.
Right. And we see this reflected in the advice he gives, especially when it comes to pitching. Remember that presentation you did at Greed AKO?
The art of the startup pitch. Bro.
That's the one. It's like a crash course in what Rudi looks for in a pitch.
Okay, so hit us with the highlights. What were some of his key takeaways?
One of the big ones was focusing on the pain. And I don't just mean stating the problem. You have to make it relatable.
Like, why should investors care? What's the real world impact?
Exactly.
And it's not enough to just talk about it, right? He's all about showing, not just telling.
Demos, visuals, testimonials, whatever you can do to bring that solution to life.
Prove it. Don't just say you can solve the problem, show me.
And that ties in with his emphasis on traction, right? It's one thing to have a great idea, but if you can't show that people actually want it.
It's going to be a tough sell. Investors want to see that there's a market that people are willing to pay.
Makes sense. Reduces the risk.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the business model.
Rudi's big on transparency there, right? Got to show you've thought about the money stuff.
He wants to see those revenue streams, wants to know you've got a handle on costs. Basically prove you're not just a dreamer, you're a doer, right? You're someone who can actually execute a plan.
Exactly. And that leads into the final point.
Yeah.
Be crystal clear about your ask.
How much funding you need, what you're going to do with it.
And how hitting those milestones will lead to success.
It's about showing that you're accountable, that you have a roadmap. So, okay, to sum up Rudi's pitching philosophy. Focus on the why, show, don't tell, traction is king, be upfront about the money, and have a plan.
It sounds pretty straightforward when you put it like that, but it's amazing how many founders miss those fundamentals.
Well, I think what we're seeing with Rudi is he's not just looking for the next unicorn.
He wants to see founders succeed, period.
Whether they're building the next billion-dollar company or, you know, something smaller but solves a real problem for people.
Exactly. He sees the value in all of it.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is what makes him such a powerful force in the New Zealand startup world. He's not just an investor.
He's a mentor, he's an advocate, he's the archangel, right?
He is. And it's not a title they just hand out to anyone. You know, past winners have included people like Stephen Tindall,
Founder of The Warehouse.
the one and only, and Ray Thompson.
Wasn't he a big name in tech?
A true pioneer.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who fundamentally shaped New Zealand business.
So yeah, for Rudi to be in that company says a lot about what he's accomplished. And, you know, listening to all of this, some folks might think, okay, this Rudi guy, he's impressive and all, but what can I, someone who isn't in New Zealand, really take away from his story?
It's a fair point, but I think there's a lot to learn from Rudi, no matter where you are in the world.
Because at its core, his story is about the power of mentorship, about giving back, and about having the guts to do things differently. And those are values that resonate everywhere.
Absolutely.
So next time you're facing a challenge, remember Rudi Bublitz, the archangel of New Zealand, because his story reminds us that with passion, a bit of vision, and yeah, maybe a little Kiwi ingenuity, anything's possible. That's a wrap on another deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next archangel wherever you are.